What's going on, guys? We are going to talk about SoFi Technologies today because they just announced their earnings the other day and the stock is basically just going crazy, and it has been going crazy for a while. So we're going to talk about basically the positives of the earnings, some of the negatives of the earnings, and basically go over the whole thing and give my opinion on it. I do own SoFi Technologies, so this is coming from someone who obviously has a bias towards hopefully SoFi going up. And with that, we'll get right into the video. So I hope you guys do enjoy the video. If you do, make sure you drop a like down below. And if you want to see more videos like this one, make sure you hit that sub button. So the first thing up here, we have the chart for SoFi Technologies, and they actually basically released earnings. It was yesterday, so yesterday after hours, and you can see the stock basically, spiked up. It spiked up even higher after earnings, but when it opened today, it only opened at 12.93, as you can kind of see here. So over the last week, we had the Ukraine scare and everything kind of happening out there. I guess I wouldn't call it a scare, right? It's a full-blown war at this point, but what we had going on is basically that tanked all the stocks. And SoFi over the last 5 days is actually up 30% as things have kind of recovered. People have came to the kind of that realization and of this is the reality of that situation. And basically, like I said, since then, it's just gone kind of on a tear up. And then as earnings announced, it popped. But we've kind of seen a retracement here over the last few days and actually returning kind of to pre-earnings level. A lot of kind of the reason for that, in my opinion, is the market just kind of has its set negativity. It's kind of has its opinion determined on all these stocks, and it's really there aren't many news kind of things that could occur other than the ending of this war and these bigger macro economic issues being the war and the interest rates being increased. So as those kind of things get figured out, a lot of these stocks will have kind of a huge be affected greatly. But right now, any news individually on stocks, it's just not affecting them. It's not having a very huge effect. So we can kind of see that over the last month. You can kind of see again this dip down in here, but we're kind of returning to those previous levels before that big dip. Over the last 6 months, again, you can kind of see SoFi went up to $22, $23. I do have a few other videos where I discuss kind of the cyclical nature of SoFi Technologies because it keeps kind of running up to this $22, $23 range and then actually dropping down to kind of this $14 range and then running back up and then kind of dropping down in here. So we've had a lot more kind of macroeconomic issues in here that have actually driven the price lower. So overall, that's kind of a quick diagnosis of kind of the chart for SoFi Technologies. So here we have Q4 numbers basically just pulled up here on Google, and for Q4 2021, for EPS they expected minus 12 cents. They reported minus 12 cents, and for revenue they expected 279.47 million, and they reported 279.88 million. So barely beat there, and then basically met on EPS. What's interesting is kind of looking at the last 3 quarters. So for Q3, basically met expectations on EPS again, but for revenue they had a pretty decent beat. So you're at 255 million compared to a reported of 277 million, and then Q2 they had expected 218 million but actually reported 231 million. So overall, they're seeing consistent growth, well, especially from Q2 to Q3, but then Q3 to Q4 they kind of had a little bit of growth in there, not a whole lot. And a lot of that, as kind of things are, the Christmas season and whatnot, Q4, you're really not getting a lot of new customers in there, right? People are focused on family, shopping, things like that. So nothing really crazy here from Q4 though. The biggest thing is basically from their guidance, which we'll get into here in a second. I did want to show this real quick, just real fast. Basically, this is NASDAQ.com. They have a lot of kind of analysts and forecasting, and basically on the yearly forecasting for 2024, they're actually expecting SoFi to start making a profit and then basically continue into profit. So they're kind of saying for the next 2 years that it'll still be unprofitable, but then by 2024 they're seeing anywhere between 12 cents to 27 cents. So that's a really positive thing. I mean, you can get in now and basically kind of ride the wave up, and then as they kind of become profitable, especially if they become profitable sooner than that, which they might try and push for, and there are a lot of good things going for them that we'll get into again here in a second. But if they become profitable sooner, then there's definitely a lot of catalysts to basically drive the stock up. That's something you kind of see in these stocks, where they go from an unprofitable state where people kind of just see them as money losers to a profitable state. And like I said, as interest rates go up, they might feel a push to kind of drive profitability sooner and kind of push this forward. So overall, still not a bad time frame. 2024 is not very far away. I mean, you're only looking at a couple years. So all right, now let's get into basically the bulk of this. Let's go over their earnings and what they kind of announced. So what you see here, these are basically just highlights that I took from this article, and I'm gonna kind of go over them and then give my opinion on each one. So on adjusted revenue, they had adjusted revenue of $1 billion, which is actually the first year they've hit that mark, up 64% from 2020. The company also saw growth in products and members for both the year and the quarter. SoFi added 377,000 new members for the quarter and 3.5 million new customers for the fiscal year, up 87% compared to 2020. And then SoFi also added over 906,000 products in the quarter, up 51% from last year, tripling the number of financial service products. So this is huge. A lot of their financial service products, they've actually been kind of rolling out, and over the last couple years, that's kind of started accounting for a larger portion of their revenue, which is basically, again, massive. And obviously, like we kind of talked about a number of times on this channel, is the number of new users is huge. For a company like this, right, their sole focus is basically getting more users and getting especially more active users that are going to use the platform, and then not only getting them on the platform, but then expanding what they use within the platform. So they're adding all these products, right, to get people basically interested in, okay, hey, why don't you use, our trading, our investing app? And now they're actually rolling out basically money accounts, which are checking and savings accounts, and they're high interest rate actually accounts, which we'll get into here. And they're kind of expecting that to make up even larger portion of their growth. So overall, that's a really huge thing that'll be coming kind of in the future, and they're just touching on it. If you go to their website, actually right now, they're basically having people sign up to get early access to their checking and savings which will be huge basically for them. So the company's financial service sector saw rapid growth. The total number of products increased by 155% over the previous year to 4.1 million from 1.6 million, driven primarily by growth in SoFi Invest and SoFi Money offerings, the company said. So basically, right, SoFi Money and SoFi Invest. SoFi Money is actually the platform that they're expanding. So when they got their bank charter, basically what they're doing is they're expanding their SoFi Money platform to take on high yield checking and savings accounts, which we kind of see here. So that's, again, is going to be huge for the business. The other thing that we have here, so lending products were also up 18% for the quarter, and personal loans mainly driving the growth. So overall, this is kind of, I mean, it is a positive, right? You had personal loans and lending, which is a massive thing that they're looking at, and that they have kind of built their business on top of. However, right, as interest rates go up, we could see this kind of pull back. So that's something that I'm a little bit concerned about, right? If they're kind of showing off this 18% and saying, oh, well, they're getting good growth in their personal loans, right? As interest rates go up, we could see that kind of fall off and then change. I did highlight here, and he has a quote in here that's relatively important, just talk about how great the results are. But SoFi, right, their CEO, and you should look into him if you do plan on investing in SoFi Technologies, but their CEO is Anthony Noto, and he has experience from Goldman Sachs as well as Twitter, which, if you think about what SoFi Technologies is basically trying to do in becoming kind of this one-stop shop for basically all people in terms of like the banking industry and investing industry, this is the perfect guy that you would want for that job. Because, right, he knows how to grow user bases, like he's seen you've seen kind of with Twitter and throughout the growth of Twitter, but he also understands banking, right, through Goldman Sachs and his experience at Goldman Sachs. So he has two huge, basically, backgrounds in exactly what you would be looking for SoFi Technologies. And I don't think he necessarily gets as much credit and as much attention as he probably deserves. So I think that's kind of a huge thing to note and look into his background. The last thing here, so the expected growth, a lot of kind of the expected growth comes from the ending of the moratorium on federal student loan payments, which is May 1st of 2022. So they're talking about the Q1 basically growth. So the reason the stock popped up is basically they guided higher on a lot of their revenue, basically numbers, and they're expecting that growth to come from basically the ending of this moratorium on federal student loans. So basically, right, that moratorium is right. You don't owe, you don't have to pay off any of your student loans for a certain number of amount of time. I have a couple friends who are basically doing that. They don't pay anything because, right, there's no point in if you're not being charged interest against your loan, then there's no point in paying it off. So basically, they've kind of sat on it and have waited and are waiting for this to end to actually start paying it. So basically, SoFi is saying, right, as those loans, as they have to start paying off those loans, basically more people are likely, right, to take on loans as they go into school, and then also, right, that means SoFi will be actually taking in money because they can't right now for the student loans that they do have. So overall, that'll benefit the business. The question really is this going to happen, right? As things kind of become more difficult with the issues in Ukraine and whatnot, we could see interest rates and some of these things basically be rolled out into the future. So if that happens, right, you could see a negative impact on the business, right, as they still have to, no one's still paying their federal student loans. But you could also see the positive impact as, right, more people take out loans because interest rates are low. So there's kind of a trade-off there that you could kind of see happening. The last thing I have up here, so Q1 of 2022, again, this goes into their expectations. So they're expecting to deliver 280 million to 285 million of adjusted net revenue. So that's up 30 to 32%. And then again, they're expected, the unexpected extension of student loan moratorium is expected to lead to a negative impact of 30 to 35 million. So basically that gets into the point that I was just talking about. So if they extend the student loan moratorium, they're basically saying that we kind of see that number actually being closer to 250 million to 255 million. So again, that could have a negative impact like I talked about there, but we'll kind of have to wait and see how things play out, because the government could push that out. They might not, because of how high inflation is and everything. So it's kind of still up in the air. But overall, there's a lot of positives here. I mean, they're trending in the right direction. They have their numbers going in the right direction. Like we talked about, they're borderline about to start basically becoming profitable here in the not so distant future. But overall, I think it's a really good earnings release. The last thing I have up here is basically what I always like looking at is where analysts are kind of still placing the stock at. So right now there are 8 analysts looking at it that are saying that SoFi is a buy. There are 4 analysts saying that it's a hold. And really what we're looking at down here is what's important. So this is the price target for SoFi Technologies from those analysts. So we have a high of $22, which I don't think is unreasonable at all. Like I said at the very start, from the chart, you can see that 22 is actually a very common mark. It runs into a lot of resistance there and then bounces back down. Median of 18, which again I think is reasonable, and then a low of 14, which is still above the current stock price. And the average comes out to 17.77. So when we type that into the calculator, we actually get a 53% upside. All I've done here is taken the current stock price, or sorry, the 17.77 minus the current stock price, which is 11.58, and that gives me $6.19. And then when I divide that by 11.58, I get a 53% return. So that is huge. That is a great return, especially because a lot of these analysts, they're looking at a 1-year price target. So really they're saying, over a year from now, we're expecting the stock price to be around $17.77. So overall, a lot of good things with SoFi Technologies. Like I said, I am long SoFi. I own SoFi, quite a few shares, and I really like the company. I think long term it's kind of the way to go, and I kind of view it almost as something that if Warren Buffett were young today, I think it's the type of business that he would be looking at and be very excited about. So overall, like I said, love this stock. I plan on holding it at least for a while, hopefully until it hits profitability, because I think profitability will send the stock price up quite a bit. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you drop a like down below. And if you want to see more videos like this one, make sure you subscribe. Otherwise, have a wonderful rest of your day.